So that family will have 6 professionals. Every firm will have their own group that will help assist that family. That's going to be my goal. I'm coming alive in 25. Alive in 25. That's my motto for 25.
I love it, Edward. I love it. And as you were speaking, you crystallized something that I thought of last time we were together. And having John here just kind of makes me feel like there's more of an opportunity for this. Man, why don't we drum up for the next month a massive, personal legacy summit here on Chatter, and just get like maybe 3 or 4 or 5 key individuals together and host a multi-hour room where everybody gets their segment, and we all find a way to benefit somehow from that, even perhaps in addition to sort of proposing our own offerings.
Yeah, we can do that, Bobby. I think we should. Yeah. I think you're correct. Hold on one second. I want to grab my headset, guys. Hey, Mark. Mark, are you ready? Mark, are you ready? All right. So put up the word of the day, and then right after the word of the day, go ahead and play. Back in 1 minute.
Waiting, Bobby. I forget. I'm driving right now. I forget where you're located and what kind of work do you do?
Yeah, and by the way, John, side note, and I see you losing your signal there.
Yeah.
I believe, if I remember correctly, when you and I first crossed paths during private beta, that you were expressing some of your views on topics relating to whether we're able to trust Google and Google searches and things like that. You and I had sort of casually agreed that it would be pretty cool to host some conversations around that. I think that was you. I'm pretty sure it was. Are you the critical thinker that
I remember now?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that was you. Yeah, man. So my Free Minds Thrive channel here, which is also the name of my company, those are the kinds of conversations I want to open up here. I was waiting for some of the Chatter tools to kick in the pro tier, but they just still haven't done it. So I think I might just start my rooms up soon anyway, expecting that those things will be here probably within 2 months now. So, but anyway, those types of conversations around building personal confidence, but primarily through finding truth in the world and thinking critically about things that are happening, not worrying so much about being right all the time, but actually finding truth and then making better choices with that information. And all this stuff about, can you trust AI prompts and information? Can you trust Google? Just all the critical thinking talking points are part of that. And then legacy is a big part as well, because I do confidence coaching for adults, and I do teen classes for obviously teens, and I do some things with children as well, all circled around how do you actually find deeper motivation in life, and how do you make sure you don't die with regret. And of course, talking to teenagers and kids, you have to approach the conversation differently. But for adults, which is where my primary business comes from, we primarily deal in coaching around finding deeper motivation around the fact that you'll be gone someday, and building your personal legacy so that the story you tell and the ideas and feelings that you leave behind on the world are something you'll be proud of someday. And so that legacy component, which inspired the name of my coaching program, Your Thriving Legacy, the legacy component, there's a self-paced standalone experience that does not require a coach, does not require joining my program. You just buy this really cool little box that has all the instructions you need in it and all the tools to design your personal legacy from now moving forward and leave it behind. Meaning, not only will you live life more intentionally with certain, coaching guidance, but more importantly, you'll take all your stories and your memories and your morals and values and just all the things that you want to leave behind for family members. Maybe you have children, friends, and the world in general. and you put all that together in a legacy collection and you leave it in a box, almost like a time capsule. And so this box that I send people has all the instructions for how to make your legacy time capsule, put it all together, and leave something behind. And the inspiration for that piece came from two things. One, the fact that every day that I wake up, I live my life intentionally because I know I could die tomorrow. Also, it was inspired by me losing people that were important to me and wishing that I had those people in my life still in some way, even if they just left letters or videos with intention, which most people don't think to do. So I wanted to give people guidance on how to do that. And so that's a big part of the legacy component of what we do. And hello, Dr. UR. I just want to say hi since you came to the stage. And I think we're waiting for Edward to
hang on, Bobby.
way back in here.
If I'm off mute, hold on, Bobby.
Sure thing.
For the actual ice maker.
Yeah.
So we shut off the house, put a new ice maker line in or the valve in.
Peace, Bobby, Mark, John. Assuming Ed is trying to get back in or something. Is there a glitch or something?
Yeah, it looks like it. He only left us about not even 2 minutes ago, but I haven't seen him pop back in, so we're just waiting on him. How are you doing today?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm blessed and highly flavored, as per usual. Thank you for asking, though.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you. Typical service, encounters that we have. So, where were you in the conversation before Ed glitched out?
Well, we were talking about the possibility of doing some type of collaboration summit, either here on Chatter or somewhere else, surrounding your personal legacy and end of life considerations, various different considerations about end of life stuff. And, some inspirational, some practical, some motivational. And as we were realizing, we have quite a few different individuals that cross paths with Edward who have different offerings that they can bring to the table. We were just throwing the idea out, and then Edward snuck out, and he's back. What's up, Edward? He's back, but not entirely. He'll probably kick in a second. Maybe his signal's still catching up to him.
I'm back, Bobby.
Hey, John. We just saw Edward pop back into the room, so I was trying to give him a minute to see if he's able to come off mute. All right. So yeah, John, the short version is that in this case, talking to Edward and yourself about the possibility of some kind of legacy or end of life consideration summit, either here on Chatter or somewhere else, my angle on that would be, how do you live life more intentionally today? And how do you leave behind what you've created so far in your life for your family, so that if someday you're gone sooner than you expect, you're on the other side of life looking back, and you at least have some semblance of peace because you left behind a time capsule of sorts with everything that your family and loved ones would need to see and hear from you from the other side. So that's essentially what I would bring to the table in this conversation. Edward, it looks like you're having a hard time over there, my friend.
Yeah. It's been going in and out. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. And by the way, Edward, I don't think it's just you, because I've seen everybody's signal getting weird here, and my internet connection is perfect. So it's something with Chatter, I think.
Yeah. Also, the screen is flipped too. Can you guys see that?
I didn't know it because I don't know what direction you're actually driving, but if I see a license or a sign or something, then I'll know.
Well, you can see the cards are on the left-hand side, and they're supposed to be on the right.
You're not in Europe?
Nope, I'm not in Europe. Hello, Doc. Can you hear me, Doc?
I can hear you. What's going on? Please.
The best day of my life, Doc. Nice to see you. We all have to get together this week so we can get you guys through the process for the appointment process. All right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we can get moving, start to protect some families. All right, Mark. Mark, you guys want to share the room? Go ahead. We're getting ready to have a little thing that I pulled up. So Mark, go ahead and you can go ahead and play. This is the worldview in 5 minutes outside of the mainstream media from a biblical viewpoint. And we'll be back right after this.
It's Monday, November 4th, AD 2024. This is the Worldview in 5 minutes, written by yours truly and heard on 125 radio stations and at theworldview.com. I'm Adam McManus. Yesterday was the International Day of Prayer for the Persecuted. If you missed it, get your free prayer guide through a special link in our transcript today at theworldview.com. Find out how to pray across 6 regions of the world, plus access inspiring stories and specific scriptures to pray. For example, Pamaya, a Hindu witch doctor in Nepal, was tormented by spirits. She said, my grandson started attending church for a couple of weeks. He would sing the songs in the morning and the evening. He told me church is so good and joyful. And he brought the New Testament and read it to me. And when he was reading, I felt really joyful. Like thousands of other new believers, she received an audio Bible that allowed her to hear God's word, despite her inability to read it. In the face of her family's threats of abandonment and persecution, she trusted Jesus Christ as her Savior and was baptized. In light of tomorrow's presidential election, Dr. James Dobson, host of Family Talk heard on 1,300 radio stations, put together a compelling presidential voting guide. In announcing this guide, he wrote, quote, "We are living in a time of great moral divide. Unless Christians engage in the upcoming election, this beloved land of liberty, which has been a beacon of hope to the world through the centuries, may become a distant memory that future generations will only read about in history books. It saddens me to think that this could be the fate of our children and grandchildren. I pray for the emergence of Americans who will come out of their hiding places to let their voices be heard on Election Day, November 5th, end quote. Get Dr. Dobson's voter guide and our transcript today at theworldview.com. And please share it widely on social media. Joshua 24 verses 14 and 15 says, "Now therefore, fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in faithfulness. Put away the gods that your fathers served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." For guidance on your senatorial, congressional, and other statewide races, go to ivoterguide.com. After you type in your address, you'll find federal and state candidate scorecards, contributions they've made and received, endorsements by groups, and answers to the conservative Christian iVoterGuide.com questionnaire. The legislative candidates are ranked from liberal to conservative, and the judicial candidates are ranked from activist to originalist, referring to the U.S. Constitution. On October 31st, Donald Trump talked with Tucker Carlson for 90 minutes in Glendale, Arizona, about his candidacy. He took issue with former GOP Congresswoman Liz Cheney of Wyoming, who's endorsed Kamala Harris for being a war hawk.
The reason she couldn't stand me is that she always wanted to go to war with people. I don't want to go to war. She wanted to stay in Syria. I took them out. She wanted to stay in Iraq. I took them out. I mean, if it were up to her, we'd be in 50 different countries. Number one, it's very dangerous. Number two, a lot of people get killed. And number three, I mean, it's very, very expensive. We spent $9 trillion bombing the Middle East. And what did we get other than lots of dead people, including our people? We got nothing.
Trump emphasized that Liz Cheney liked to sound tough in her former ivory tower when sending American soldiers to unnecessary wars.
She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face. You know, they're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington. Let's send 10,000 troops right into the mouth of the enemy.
Kamala Harris, the Democratic presidential nominee, claimed that Trump's rhetoric was violent.
He has increased his violent rhetoric, Donald Trump has, about political opponents, and in great detail suggested rifles should be trained on former Representative Liz Cheney. This must be disqualifying. Anyone who wants to be president of the United States who uses that kind of violent rhetoric is clearly disqualified and unqualified to be president.
On October 31st, EWTN anchor Raymond Arroyo interviewed U.S. Cardinal Raymond Burke about the moral obligation for Catholics to vote, reports LifeSiteNews.com.
Cardinal Burke, you recently posted moral questions regarding voting on your website. It's a guide for Catholics voting in the U.S. election next week. And you write this: for Catholics, as for all men and women of goodwill, the question is, in fulfilling our civic duty to vote, how can we be obedient to the law of God written upon our hearts in the present situation of deplorable moral and therefore cultural decline and decay? In your guide, you emphasize human life, marriage, family, religious freedom as the preeminent issues for the common good for Catholics to consider as they go into the voting place. How and why should Catholics prioritize those above party allegiance or personality, which seems to govern a lot of the vote today?
We are servants of God, first of all, and being good servants of God, then we are good servants to our country. And if we don't obey God's law, then we're not going to serve well our country. And so these three goods, human life from its inception to natural death, safeguarding the integrity of marriage and the family, and of religious freedom, are written on the human heart. That's how God made us, inscribed his law in our hearts. We must be obedient to that law. And in that obedience, we serve not only our own good, but the good of our neighbor, the good of the nation. And so it's as simple as that.
Psalm 19, verses 7 through 11 says, "The law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. And the fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever." And finally, a 10-year-old dog was rescued after it was found floating down an Arizona canal on a submerged shopping cart, reports the Good News Network. No one knows how long it was stranded. After passersby alerted the Humane Society, an emergency animal medical technician and some firemen were able to save it. Upon examination by a vet, they discovered it only sustained minor injuries. After news reports of the dog trauma, the dog named Dorothea has since found a new home and is living with a family in Youngstown, Arizona. And that's the World View on this Monday, November 4th, in the year of our Lord 2024. Subscribe by Amazon Music or by iTunes or email to our unique Christian newscast at theworldview.com. I'm Adam McManus. Seize the day for Jesus Christ.
Good morning, Uella. Good morning. What did I do, Uella? What did I do? What did I do, Miss Uella?
What did you do?
You came to my platform. I'm so pleased. That's why I say, what did I do? I'm just grateful that you came. It's so nice to have the United Kingdom here with the United States. In the importance of both of our voices on the global stage, you know, it's very important. So I appreciate you.
Sometimes our rooms clash because I'm not doing a room today, but normally I've got a room open now. That's probably why you haven't seen me.
Yeah, but no. Normally your room, when I come in your room, my room is already over because I normally do my room at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, California time. I'm running behind today, so we still want to do our room. It's just normally I do it earlier. So when your room is starting, I'm normally just coming into your room.
Yeah. Okay. Oh right. Okay. So you're a bit later today.
Yeah. So I'm a bit later today. Normally, we'll be just like, I mean, we're right in the middle of the thick of things, but we just finished our first segment right now. And we have an actual producing whole platform of how we run our room. So Mark is our producer. So he produces all of the channel. We go over the content before we do it, and then we come up with different videos, and we get into different conversations. And we use a worldview in 5 minutes, which is from a biblical viewpoint outside of the mainstream media. So we hear other news from around the world. It's not just mainstream media, whether it's the BBC or Fox News or CNN. So that's one of the things we want to do, so people get alternative information. And then we just go into what's happening around, what's really on the ground. So we just try to make sure everybody's looking at things, and we present and we let people decide on what they want based on our 3 documents. So this Conservative Voices room is all really built on the 3 documents of the United States of America: our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence.
Right. I'll have to look out for it because mostly, I think prior to my room, I'm usually preparing for it. I don't do this so much. I'm probably normally preparing for my own room or something like this. But I will definitely look out and come because I am more on the conservative side of things.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I've spoken to you many times. I know that you're more on the conservative, especially when it comes to life. When we were in the room talking about euthanasia and one taking one's life, and we talk about the abortion issue. We talk about the mutilation of both men and women when it comes to transition. So I know that you're conservative in all those respects,
Yeah. So I would definitely like to know more about the American political system, because I do that room, don't I? the Brits and the USA room, and that's really because I want to have that knowledge. I want to have that learning. That's why I do that room.
Yeah. So one of the things that you'll learn here that we actually go over, and today I have a couple of those things where you'll learn about the actual documentation on what we as Americans have the rights to do and not to do, and what our government can do. Our government does not own the United States. The president doesn't own the United States of America. See, our president is a representative figure in the executive branch that represents the people, but they don't own anything. The same thing with our 50 states. We have governors that run those 50 states. Those governors are elected to take care of the will of the people in those states. That's the whole purpose of them. We also break down our Congress. Our Congress comes based on the population. So we have 435 members of Congress based on population of states. And then we get 2 senators per state. So we have 3 different branches: legislation branch, the judicial branch, and then the executive branch, which is supposed to all be separate powers where we have checks and balances. But unfortunately, right now in the U.S., we have a big bureaucracy, which is really the machine. That's unfortunately what's running the U.S. politics right now. And we all personally believe that that's what we're trying to break down right now and change it. So that's the difference. Supposed to be. Exactly, Bobby. Supposed to be. You guys can raise your hand anytime too. You guys just jump in. A problem our founders did expect it. Yeah. So our founding fathers, they came from the United Kingdom, and that's what they did not. They did not want tyranny. They did not want the king, nor a president, nor a parliament, nor a dictator. They did not want them to rule. They didn't want the state to be the strongest. That's why in the United States, we hold these truths to be self-evident. For the first time in human history, the United States document says this is self-government. They wanted the individual to govern themselves. They did not want it to come from a central state or from a body of people like the World Trade Organization. They're trying to make everything central. But we, all of those who are conservatives in the United States, believe in personal responsibility.
Right. Yeah.
So, and unfortunately, we do have a very heavy Democratic Party or Progressive Party that believes in programs. And if you notice that, that's what we have here in the United States going on right now, where we're funding more programs versus people being responsible for their own behavior.
Okay. So do you
And that's why we
have any, do you believe that there is any, I don't know what, well, it depends what you mean by programs or what is meant by programs, but is there ever any case where a program might be good for somebody, or do you discount any program?
Well, it's not I discount the program. I don't think programs should be ran by government because if you look, because if you look at most communities in the U.S., like all of our schools started from local communities. All of our hospitals started from local communities. Like if you look at most of our hospitals, like St. Jude, or you have Seventh-day Adventist hospitals, or you have Catholic, all these things started from the church. They did not start from government. The moment government gets involved in community, they destroy it. So for me, what I personally believe, if you live in our community, then it's up to that local community to take care of those citizens within their local community. And the reason why that happens, because if the family structure breaks down, then it's up to that particular community to make sure that those people within the community are strong enough. So I use this term all the time. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. But why is weak? Because it causes the most tension. So when people in community are not holding up their end of the bargain, then you have attacks on that community. And that's what we're dealing with right now, because we have more people in America hoping that someone else in America takes care of them.
Right. Yeah.
Well, the other
so that's the
Edward,
go ahead, Bobby.
That was a great summary of the system and some of why it should be a certain way and why it was intended to be a different way than it currently is. But another more practical thing is, who cares more about something getting done right than the people directly impacted by the thing at a local level? There's nobody cares about my family more than my family. Uella doesn't care, no matter how amazing she is. Edward doesn't care as much about my family as he cares about his. I don't care what anybody says. You'll do for your family in a way you won't do for mine. So that being the case, all the power, or most of the power and responsibility for taking care of my family, should rest in my hands. In fact, it does from God. And I know that because without anybody telling me anything, I'm responsible for everything, right? It's not until somebody takes that responsibility from me or I give it to someone that now they have that power or responsibility. So who then has control and concern the most beyond my family? Well, my neighborhood and my community, right? Nobody cares more about my community than my community around me. So the people who live on my block, the people who live in my town and my city, the people who live in Long Island, New York, we care more about Long Island than Mark does. Why? Because we live here. We're the ones who have to live here and deal with any decisions we make that impact us. And then from there, you go to the states, and then from there, you go to the national, federal, centralized government. And then from there, you go to a global government. Who cares the least about Bobby's family? The people who are furthest separated from me in the hierarchy. And that would be the global entities that are being created essentially as global governments. They care the least about Bobby's family. Then the national federal government, they care the next least about my family, because they're not connected. They have no direct concern because they're not here. It doesn't affect them. So I'm a number. I'm a random name. I'm an area on a map. They do not care. So the whole idea is that power rests with the people, because the people are going to be the most efficient with their resources, the most efficient and responsible with their money and their manpower or human power. And that's just the way it is. When you give federal centralized governments too much power, or a king or a queen or whatever, an emperor, that person is going to do what will keep them in power, because they become more interested in their self-preservation than they do of the concerns of the people. Why? Because their power doesn't come directly from anything. It comes from them taking it from everybody else. And so this is the problem we deal with today, where government is inefficient and irresponsible, in many ways immoral, because it's not their money. It's not their families. It's not their health. They don't care. What they care about now is the immense amount of power that they have focused into a small number of people who have impact on a large number of people. And that's the problem we face now. Government no longer cares about a strong, healthy people, a free people. Government now cares about government maintaining being the big giant government. And that's the freaking problem. And the founders and framers knew this, and they wrote about it in the Federalist Papers and even the Anti-Federalist Papers, which, you know, are another thing most people don't talk about. They wrote about it in the Declaration. They tried to formalize it in the Constitution with a sort of compromised version of what the government should look like. And they just wanted so badly to make sure, please don't let this government be able to get out of hand, because the government only has the power entrusted to it by the people. All the other powers rest locally and at the state level and with the people. But the government has taken a lot of it, and now the federal branch is by far the most powerful branch of our government, as always happens. And that's the concern right now, is how do we pull it back? They don't want to give it back, but how do we take it back? And I will go on the record as saying Donald Trump is the only way forward with that, because he's pulling guys together like Elon Musk, who wants to look at government efficiency, guys like Ron Paul, the father, who now wants to go in there and be part of getting corruption out of the system, RFK Jr., who wants to make America healthy again and allow people to take responsibility for their own health instead of government dictating what we do and how we do it. There's so many things going on right now, and you know, there's a lot of work to be done. But that's essentially the philosophy. Everything should rest with the people, because the people care more about the people than government does.
Yep.
Hello, John. Welcome, John. I got two Johns up here. Uella, go ahead. You can respond, Uella. I hope that made sense.
Yes, that absolutely makes sense. Yes. No, I was just concurring. Yes, that absolutely made sense.
And I'll add one more thing, is that the problem we face today is that so many Americans and people around the globe, it seems, have been convinced that they can't trust their own judgment and their own capacity to do things. And so they think if the government isn't given money and power to then return the power and money back to us in a way that they, you know, see fit, with a system they create without us being able to read the legislation that they're signing into law before they sign it, without us having any say in the process, they just do it. And the problem with that, of course, is that not only are they inefficient, not only do they not care, but they're not going to make the types of decisions we would make as people if we were compromising with each other. Because if me and my neighbors had to all get together and find a way to support each other and make sure everyone's doing okay, you know, we're going to be a little more careful with how we spend. We're not going to end up with $35 trillion in debt, some of which is owed to our enemies. And this is the problem, right? Is like, I have to be responsible with my bills and my decisions and how I organize my resources in my house. Otherwise, I go to jail, right? If I don't pay my bills on time, I end up delinquent, and I end up having credit agencies ruin my life. But the government just spends money and prints money that doesn't exist, thereby inflating the currency and taking away my buying power. They get to do all that, and nobody ever holds them accountable. Most of the government should be in prison based on the standard families have to abide by. But again, we now live in a system where the government can do whatever it wants. It doesn't care what the people think. And that is, putting us right back in a new age version of an old problem that Americans dealt with originally, which is that we're not in control anymore, and the government does not represent us.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. John, the new John, welcome, John. I think that's the first time you've been here on our platform. Is that correct, John?
There it is. Could be. Yeah, I think I may be in the wrong room because I have exactly opposite perspective. I
So,
think that,
so why do you think you're in the wrong room, John? I mean, if we're just having a conversation.
well, because I'm in fear of a dictator taking the country in places that no one can imagine. And the words have come out of Trump's mouth, and it's come out of J.D. Vance's mouth. And if you look at some of the things that people he idolized, they think we need to get over dictator phobia, and that's alone,
Okay.
I think,
So,
should scare
so
people.
John, so John, I have a question for you, and I appreciate your assessment. Okay. So John, how does the United States, our actual government, work?
that's a your conversation.
Yeah, that's my question. Yes, because what you just said is that you actually believe that one man is going to take over 50 independent governors, take over 100 senators and 435 people and 347 million people in America, that one man is going to do that. Now, I just want to make sure I'm on the same page, because I believe in limited government. Okay. Our government's not limited. But for you to actually believe that in the United States of America, that one person is going to be a dictator when that's not how our particular political process works is pretty interesting to me.
I don't think he can become a dictator if the checks and balances work, but that's his intent. That's the goal he has. He likes hanging out with dictators. He respects dictators, and that's the direction he wants to take the country. So, how do you think that's going to
Okay.
work? You think they're going to be in alignment?
Yeah. So I want you to share with me. He was our 45th president, correct?
He's much more emboldened.
No.
Hasn't
I said he
remnant.
was, but no. He was our 45th president, correct?
Get to the point.
The point is, John, if you personally believe that the 45th president of the United States did not govern according to dictatorship, so I'm going to ask you this question, John. What are presidents known for in America? How do we recognize presidents? By what?
I'm not sure where you're getting at.
Okay, presidents are only recognized by their policies. By their policies, bro. They're not recognized by their rhetoric or what they say. Okay? Whether I like it or not, I live in a country where we have a country of laws. I live in a state where there's laws. Okay? Now, if I don't like the law, then as a citizen, I have a right to make sure that law gets changed. I can we can get together and vote our elected officials out, which we're doing in California, slowly but surely. Because I personally believe that I have a governor in California that's really a tyrant. Okay. But you personally believe, based on what you're saying, is that the governor of California is not a dictator, correct?
Well, I want to add something, and I
1 second, Bobby. 1 second, Bobby.
Yeah, go ahead.
Bobby,
Well, John
let him
John
answer.
didn't come off mute. He came off mute.
Okay, he did.
I don't know.
He
Maybe
came
you
off.
hear me. Yeah, of course.
Go
I
ahead.
don't think he's a dictator. No, I don't think he has intentions of being a dictator. I don't think he thinks in that direction.
Okay.
There's 3 branches of government, and the Supreme Court justices that he helped get appointed have given the president powers that we've never seen before.
Okay. So if you say that at the behest of the executive branch, according to our documentation, does the president of the United States get to choose during his presidency those who will be appointed to the Supreme Court? Do they get that right?
we should just cut through this because we both know the process.
John, I know you say you know the process, but right now you're acting like as though he didn't follow the process. You said he hand selected. No, he told people that he was going to, during his first campaign, that he was going to put on conservative justices. And he did that. He put 300 conservative judges all over the federal bench. Then he actually done exactly what he said he's going to do. He actually got 3 conservative justices on the Supreme Court. If the Democratic Party would have won, they would have put liberal judges, which they did. Joe Biden did put one liberal person on the bench, one who said that she doesn't know what a woman is. Did I get that correct?
I think the president of the United States should be able to take out anybody he thinks that is a threat without any
No,
process.
John, you and I agree. You and I agree that that's not the case. We don't agree. You know that no president on planet Earth should be able to take out any human being. You know that. I know that. Now I'm gonna ask you a simple question.
Supreme Court. That's not what the Supreme Court.
Okay, John, I hear you, but I'm not going to be in fear of something that the Supreme Court has done that has not been a precedent. Okay, if you and I sat down and asked ourselves, how many cases do you think the Supreme Court even look at every year? How many do you even think they look at? Most Americans will never ever get to a Supreme Court issue. Never. So for me to sit here and have a go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
It has changed, and if pressed, the Supreme Court can make those decisions to support the president to basically do whatever he wants to if it's in the name of the presidency. Do you think that's
okay? This is what I think, John. I don't think that anything in human history, because we're all humans, we're flawed. None of us are perfect. There's 9 people on the Supreme Court that are individual people. They can only read laws the way they read them. If they personally believe right now, those 9 justices, if they personally believe right now that the president of the United States should be able to operate our laws according to the executive branch with immunity, then that's what they've done. I have to have that as settled. I can't say, okay, you know what? Our Supreme Court all made the wrong decision. Because if that was the case, John, wouldn't we also want to say that any other laws, Brown against the Board of Education, all the slavery laws that took place, should we just break all those too? Because the Supreme Court decided all those. 1 second.
I'm not sure what you mean by breaking them. I'm telling you, I don't agree with their decision, along with a lot of other people, and I think it's dangerous.
Yes. And John, I agree. But John, do you not think that there's also half of Americans that do not agree with the decision that a lawfare has gone on in America with one American, that they raided the man's home? Okay. They've impeached him twice. He got shot at twice. They had a fake dossier. All these different things of one man. Why is this one man on the crosshairs of all these political operatives? Could you please explain that to me? I'm just one American.
Never been a person that's taken a party to such division and hate in the history of our country.
Okay. All right, Bobby, I'm gonna let you go ahead because I happen to be American and I don't see what the news say. You believe that there's division, and I'm going to tell you that the division is not on conservative side. I'm a conservative. I happen to be ethnically black in the United States, and I can tell you that everything you just said, John, based on division, is not on the side of the conservatives. And if you believe that Donald Trump has caused division, well, I can tell you he has not caused division for this one American. Go ahead, Bobby.
Well, my interest here is not really to advocate for or speak against Trump or Harris or any of them, because the conversation John entered into wasn't about one candidate. And that's kind of the whole point of what our conversation was about. And interestingly, if you take the candidates out of it and don't get so caught up in the heat of the moment, we were having a broader conversation, a more general conversation about the intended design of America and why it was that way. So I think actually myself and John actually probably agree on more, as long as we don't bring up Trump, right? Because he thinks he's going to be a dictator. I think he already proved he wouldn't be. In fact, he tried to shrink government in terms of regulations and other things. But if we get into that, all we're going to be doing is arguing about the election that's about to take place. Has already started, but we'll finish up hopefully by tomorrow night, as was the intention as well. The idea we were discussing was, why is America designed the way it is? And actually, what I described is the opposite of a dictatorship, right? I described, as me and John, I think, agree, and Edward agrees as well, that despite what we're currently interpreting it as because of our hatred for or dislike of or disagreement with modern policies and candidates, which we're stuck choosing between, that the design was actually intended to be anti-tyrannical, anti-authoritarian by design. And one of the things we were discussing, which John came in and on the one hand said, I think this is the wrong room and I disagree, but then went on to say, but I don't want Trump being a dictator. So then you do, I think, it seems like you would agree with what I said, because I didn't say anything that was an opinion. It was a matter of fact about why the United States of America was designed the way it was to keep the powers separated so that a president could not go into office and affect the country so much that it swings one way or the other way, because the people are in charge of their own lives at the local level and the state level for the majority of things, and the federal government takes on things that they were given the power to do. So my argument is actually something totally different than what you guys were discussing, because in that discussion, we find all our disagreements and we get caught up in a strange loop of inconsistencies. And I do believe it's inconsistent, because if we believe this government should be set up so Trump could never enter office and become a dictator, then we agree that a government that is limited in power, especially the federal branch, is important, because we should never have to worry that any one election would be the difference between tyranny and dictatorship in America and freedom and a republic with democratic principles. We should never have to worry about that. That should never be a concern. John shouldn't have to be concerned about Trump doing it. I shouldn't have to be concerned that the collective federal government is a dictator today, which is my personal concern. It's not about one person. We get stuck in the technicalities. The federal government is a dictator. I know, because we all just lived through COVID, and that's exactly what happened. And so that's my perspective, though, right? So me and John can disagree on who the threat is, but we agree that we don't want a threat. It should never be that we're more concerned about who the president becomes than about all the senators, all the representatives, and the state we live in. But we are now, because what has happened, exactly what John is worried about. In my opinion, John, your concern has already happened, because the expectation, the precedent is already in place. The powers have been given to the federal branch, to the executive branch, that they can now have enough power that one man can enter and we become a dictatorship. That was not intended to be the design of the United States. In fact, I believe it was the anti-federalists who were saying, we're giving too much power to the central government in this new compromise that we're designing in the US Constitution. This is going to be a problem. And they were exactly right, because here we are worried that any one election, whoever becomes president will swing the country. It should never be that. There are layers of protections between us and what a president can do to us and for us and on our behalf, and those have been eroded. So, John, I think we're actually on the same general page, I think, but I won't put ideas in your head or words in your mouth, that our government is too big and has too much power, because we should never have to worry that a president can change the United States into a dictatorship. And I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
Bobby, you make a lot of good points. I don't know if it's the size, if it's the power of the government or the control of who's pulling purse strings. I must apologize. I've got to go here soon, but I would love to get deeper into this. I've got some things I got to do here. Also, the stress of today is.
Yeah. Hey, John, do me a favor, John. Please follow the room, John. You're always welcome here. because I look at you as a fellow American. I don't look at you as someone who's on right or left. I'm an American. You're an American. I love what Bobby said. We don't want our government to get any bigger than the citizen, because I believe the bigger the citizen, the smaller the government. The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. That's what we want to stay away from. We don't want big government. That's what this idea is supposed to be all about. I don't care who the person is. I don't want big government. I don't want one person running anything. That's the difference. But I do appreciate you coming through, because I know that for all of us as Americans, we want to be able to just take care of our own lives. That's why I love our documentation says we hold these truths to be self-evident. I'm not making my evidence based on any administration. It's based on my life and my wife's life, of what we want for our happiness. That's what I look at. That's why I look at these documents for. 61 years old, and I want to be able to live free without someone in the central government telling me how I should or should not live my life. I do appreciate you coming through for sure.
Well, you see, Edward, you see what happens when we, and this is my approach toward every conversation, and so I appreciate John was able to stick around at least a little longer, is that we shouldn't all be afraid that the other candidate's going to win because we're fearing for our own freedom and our own ability to live our life the way we want to. That was the entire design of the United States, was with the hope that you didn't have to worry so much about it. Of course, the president matters. We wouldn't have elections if it didn't. And they gave far more power to a presidential position than they had previously before the Constitution was designed. But it shouldn't have to be that John is so worried about Trump becoming a dictator, and I'm so worried about a mindless drone stepping into the presidency who has no real policy positions, is probably lying about half of them, right? So that's my position versus John's about the current state of things. But it shouldn't be the case that that difference changes how much our lives really change when that president steps in. Regarding foreign affairs, of course. Regarding certain federal issues, of course. But that executive branch has given so much power and influence to regulatory agencies that those agencies have now put regulations in place that act very similarly to laws. And so without even passing laws through people's representatives in Congress, we have to worry about the president just putting nameless people and nameless faces out into these bureaucratic agencies who then do things that affect us. So there's so many problems with the structure and what it's become, whether it's like what John said, it's the money and where the money's come from and who's pulling the purse strings and all that, whether it's the size and inefficiency and I would even say corruption of the centralized government, not because it intended to be, but once something becomes so bloated, efficiency tends to suffer because they can just do whatever they want and nobody's stopping them. And it shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be that I'm so damn worried about Kamala winning and John is so damn worried about Trump winning. It should be that I would like my person to win. Yeah, it's going to have an impact, but it's not going to destroy the United States. Yet here we all are, ready for the end of the country. Regardless of who wins, half the country thinks it's the end of the country. It should not be like that. And so, I think that's that. I give that there's so many reasons for that, but the one that could probably help us all the most is a press full of journalists who actually just cover the facts of the matter and let the American people make their own damn choices without trying to influence our opinions with all this commentary and interpretations and translations of what's going on out there. The repetition, the propaganda, that can go too. But again, we're getting into another layer here. So I think the bigger one is let's focus on the big picture. I think we all generally agree it'd be nice to not have a centralized government where a dictator could take hold. And from there, we can then build common ground out and then maybe find that, yeah, we disagree on who the candidates are and the policies and the ideology, but we generally actually agree on the design of the government should not allow for a dictator or a king or a queen. I don't want Trump to become a dictator. I don't want to put that out on the record, but I'm voting for him. So, figure that out. I don't see him as the threat John sees him as. But honestly, if I thought that the man would be, in my personal judgment, I would not be happy about that either. Because I don't care what the policies are. I don't want a dictator in there. I don't want a tyrant. I don't want a despot. I don't want any of that. And so my solution, in my mind, ideally, shrink the centralized federal government. Uella, what's going on for you?
For John, if he's able to answer before he goes, I missed the bit where you explained why you think Trump is going to be a dictator. I did hear you say he speaks to dictators, meaning Putin, I'm sure, but speaking to dictators is a part that any president is going to have to do. So I missed the bit where you have concluded that he's going to want to be a dictator. That's a genuine question, by the way.
Yeah, I don't want to go into that right now. I'd love to. I'm trying to figure out how to follow this room. This app has always been a little bit of a mystery.
Yeah. Just you see where it says conservative voice at the top? You see conservative voices? Just click on that, and then you can see where it says follow. You see that?
I do. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the mutual respect of this room, Bobby.
Hey, John.
Always,
John. Listen, I've been a conservative since I was 18. I'm 61 years old. I have family members that we have conversations, but we dialogue for the common ground because I still have to live with my family. I still have to love my neighbor. And all Americans together, we're in this together. We either have a country or we don't. Like Bobby said, I don't want anybody being a dictator. I don't want anybody trying to control every individual American. That's what makes us uniquely different than all other 194 countries, that we as individual people get to govern our own lives. And I like he said, I think that we're so far beyond now because of the administrative state that now we got people making laws and doing things that normal American citizens don't even know what's happening because we have such a big bureaucracy right now. But you're always welcome here. And trust me, we're going to treat you with respect. All I like to do is let's have discussion and collaboration where we're not fighting each other, but we're just trying to understand the issues of the day because we still have to live after this election. All of us still have to live after this election. So,
one thing I think we can both is that the big winner in this whole thing is media. The media buys are off the chart with billions of dollars. There's got to be
but John, that's true. John, that's true. It is. But you know what? It's unfortunate, John. If the media is the one informing most Americans about their politics, then we're all in trouble. And I think we need a much more well-educated, knowledgeable citizenry so that all of us know how our government actually works versus us listening every 4 years to the pundits or to all of the talking heads.
For advertising.
Exactly. So if we can get away from the talking heads, like I tell my children all the time, what happens in our house is much more important what happens in the White House. Why? Because I got control of what happens in my house. And to me, that's more important because I don't want to get back and forth with people saying certain things that are not altogether true. You see what I'm saying?
Into the media buys of all the ads, and that's off the charts, billions of dollars. So there's got to be a better way to doing that because they're getting a lot of money out of this, and that's where all our funds are going.
Yeah, and they're causing a lot of division too, John. They're causing a lot of division, which is not good.
Different, yeah, it's a whole different division. Yeah.
So, but I appreciate you, Mark.
Thank you.
Are you? Oh, John, go ahead, John. We got another John. He wants to share. Go ahead, John.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just wanted to put in my 2 cents regarding the whole thing about conservative versus liberal, or and then we have, of course, the progressive, which is far left of liberal. And I go back to Robert Kennedy's statement of what democracy description or definition used to be when he was growing up and his uncle was president and his dad was attorney general. Say what you will, but that speech was pretty amazing, whether you like RFK or not. And the other thing about people is you don't want to write off people just because you disagree with one point of view on one subject. That demonization that's going on is horrible. So you have to look past the personality. You got to look at what they stand for, what their policies truly are. how they're expressing them. But I would say that the Conservative Party was not built just completely on conservative ideas. It was built on the Constitution. And the one thing that we can all rally around is our US Constitution. The problem with society today, and it's become almost a subculture, is we're not teaching the Constitution. We're not teaching the tenets of our democracy, representative democracy. Most people can't articulate exactly how it runs or how it's supposed to run. And I'm still studying it myself. But the whole point is, I was in DC, my daughter's a freshman there at George Washington. And I decided to take a deeper dive in really understanding what this is all about. But there was a lady visiting from Boston, which is where my wife is from, and she was dead set against the right to bear arms. And I said, well, wait a minute, you're from Boston, the Boston Tea Party, the whole thing with the revolution. I said, our right to bear arms is to form a militia against the tyrannical government. So what are you talking about? And she said, oh, well, maybe I'm wrong. So we do have things in power for the right to bear arms, and we should rally behind the Constitution. And as long as we enforce the Constitution, we'll never have another civil war, or we'll never have an uprising against the tyrannical government. But the whole point is that we wanted to be different than England and the UK and Europe. We wanted to do something different. It's been called the Great Experiment from the beginning, and we have to have this experiment play out. But the only way the experiment can remain valid is if we stick to our constitutional principles and have that executed throughout our policies and government. So I'll land it there. Thanks.
Hey, Mark, go ahead and play the first video, Mark. We've had a very robust room this morning so far. Please share the room also, guys. Please share the room. But go ahead, Mark. Play that first clip.
One question matters. Which candidate will get the 270 votes needed to win the Electoral College? Our founders so deeply feared a tyranny of the majority that they rejected the idea of a direct vote for president. That's why they created the Electoral College. For more than 2 centuries, it has encouraged coalition building, given a voice to both big and small states, and discouraged voter fraud. Unfortunately, there is now a In every presidential election, only one question matters. Which candidate will get the 270 votes needed to win the Electoral College? Our founders so deeply feared a tyranny of the majority that they rejected the idea of a direct vote for president. That's why they created the Electoral College. For more than 2 centuries, it has encouraged coalition building, given a voice to both big and small states, and discouraged voter fraud. Unfortunately, there is now a well-financed below-the-radar effort to do away with the Electoral College. It is called National Popular Vote, or NPV, and it wants to do exactly what the founders rejected: award the job of president to the person who gets the most votes nationally. Even if you agree with this goal, it's hard to agree with their method. Rather than amend the Constitution, which they have no chance of doing, NPV plans an end run around it. Here's what NPV does. It asks states to sign a contract to give their presidential electors to the winner of the national popular vote instead of the winner of the state's popular vote. What does that mean in practice? It means that if NPV had been in place in 2004, for example, When George W. Bush won the national vote, California's electoral votes would have gone to Bush, even though John Kerry won that state by 1.2 million votes. Can you imagine strongly Democratic California calmly awarding its electors to a Republican? Another problem with NPV's plan is that it robs states of their sovereignty. A key benefit of the Electoral College system is that it decentralizes control over the election. Currently, a presidential election is really 51 separate elections, one in each state and one in DC. These 51 separate processes exist side by side in harmony. They do not and cannot interfere with each other. California's election code applies only to California and determines that state's electors. So a vote cast in Texas can never change the identity of a California elector. NPV would disrupt this careful balance. It would force all voters into one national election pool. Thus, a vote cast in Texas will always affect the outcome in California. And the existence of a different election code in Texas always has the potential to unfairly affect a voter in California. Why? Because state election codes can differ drastically. States have different rules about early voting, registering to vote, and qualifying for the ballot. They have different policies regarding felon voting. They have different triggers for recounts. Each and every one of these differences is an opportunity for someone, somewhere, to file a lawsuit claiming unfair treatment. Why should a voter in New York get more or less time to early vote than a voter in Florida? Why should a hanging Chad count in Florida but not in Ohio? The list of possible complaints is endless. And think of the opportunities for voter fraud if NPV is passed. Currently, an attempt to steal a presidential election requires phony ballots to appear or real ballots to disappear in the right state or combination of states, something that is very hard to anticipate. But with NPV, voter fraud anywhere can change the election results. No need to figure out which states you must swing, just add or subtract the votes you need or don't want, wherever you can most easily get away with it. And finally, if NPV is adopted and winning is only about getting the most votes, a candidate might concentrate all of his efforts in the biggest cities or the biggest states. We could see the end of presidential candidates who care about the needs and concerns of people in smaller states or outside of big cities. Here's why all of this is of so much concern. NPV is more than halfway to its goal. NPV's contract will go into effect when states with a combined 270 electoral votes have signed. To date, NPV already has the support of 10 states plus DC. Together, that's 165 electoral votes, leaving only 105 votes to go. It is time to stop this attempt to undo the way American presidents are elected, which will in turn undo America. The people behind NPV think they are wiser than every generation of Americans that preceded them. They aren't. I'm Tara Ross for Prager University.
Join Prager University. Click here to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click here to sign up for free at prageru.com for quizzes, contests, and prizes.
Scripture of the day. Thank you. So you guys see, sorry about that. You guys see anything or hear anything on that one that you want to touch on, which I find very interesting. That's why I pulled it. Do you guys hear me? Joella? Bobby?
Yes, I can
Mark?
hear you.
Okay. Did you find that interesting?
Yeah. I always find the question of gun rights interesting.
Yeah. Why did you find that interesting?
Um, I suppose as a Brit, obviously we don't have gun rights here. I suppose what I find interesting is why it is so important to Americans. That's the
Well, so let's go back to the 13 colonies. That's a great question, Uella. Let's go back to the 13 colonies. So King George III at that time was going into homes, both in the United Kingdom and in the 13 colonies. There were seizing people's property, and the people at the day had no protection. So that's why our founder fathers here in the United States decided that that the citizens have a right to bear arms to protect their property because they did not want the government coming in. And that's why it's so important to the American that we get the right to protect our own homes and protect our family. That's the reason. So it's not for what you hear the naysayers say or the activists say, but I should have a right to protect my family in the event that I have to protect them with the firearm. But I also still supposed to be responsible. I'm supposed to have a license to carry that arm, you know? So I personally believe that it's the individual. And I always say this, people kill people. Guns don't kill people. That's the difference for me. So that's why it's important to Americans because people want to do is protect their property, protect their home. That's the reason. And if anybody else want to join in, you guys can share.
Well, that kind of makes sense. I guess what people have always said, what I've always heard, is that it's in the event that the government, to protect yourselves against the government.
Well, that was the premise, right, Uella? So remember, it started with the 13 colonies, and at the time, the 13 colonies had no recourse because under King George III, they would come in and seize property. They would break in, take people's homes, took their property, and they claimed it as a state. That's what the government did.
Right.
So, so that's why our founding fathers here in the United States, which were British first, they were British, right? They come from the United Kingdom versus the United States, but they wanted the individual in the United States to prevent tyranny. So our government knows right now there's over 300 million firearms in the hands of Americans. We have the largest militia of individual citizens because of the fact that we don't want the government taking over our property or our homes or even our states. That's the reason why. So for us, it's much more indicative of us protecting our own hard-owned homes. We work for them, we work for our children, we work for our families versus someone in a central government, whether it's the state government or the federal government, coming in and telling us how we should and should not live. That was the ultimate reason, but the personal reason is still to protect your own intellectual property that we've earned. And Bobby or John, or if you guys have anything you want to add to that.
Well, the one thing I wanted to add is that there's kind of maybe a misconception or people leave out the footnotes. Our country was founded on life, liberty, and the pursuit of property rights. Property rights. And in order to settle the area, this is what happened, and of course was responsible for vast amount of immigration. But the pursuit of property rights is so the government can't steal or seize your property. We do have a thing called eminent domain, which to build freeways and things like that, the owner is supposed to be compensated fair market value. And in order to do some of the things we need to do with infrastructure. But they changed it to happiness in the final version, but the undercurrent or the founding fathers, it was all designed to give people the right to own property and to settle the property and to not have any type of seizure. Now, obviously, we have mortgage laws that, and of course I'm in the real estate business to protect the lender. But there's been a lot of corruption over the history of the United States, and some of the power has slipped away from the people and been into the bureaucrats. And probably the number one thing that could solve all real estate very easily is a concept called right to build. So there are, for example, San Diego County, where I'm at, there are certain guidelines that you have to build a certain density. It has to have parking. It has to have setbacks. It has to have certain parameters for the contractor to operate within. But as long as they're within those guidelines, they should have a right to build. There are parts of San Diego County where this is being done, and there is literally an explosion of development in that zip code. But there's no reason why the governor of California, or if the federal government wanted to institute some kind of an overall change that would put pressure on the states to abide into a right to build, we could solve the real estate crisis that we're in. I was in a real estate room earlier on Chatter in Clubhouse, and they were talking about this very issue. The $25,000 benefit to buyers to buy a house is crazy. Most communities have too many buyers right now. It's not. It's a seller's market, not a buyer's market. That incentive would be great if we were in a buyer's market, but we're in a seller's market. So there's very limited inventory. By having $25,000 credit to first-time home buyers, which just means you haven't bought a home in the last 3 years, it would be great. But we're not in a buyer's market. We're in a seller's market. With limited inventory, it's a disaster waiting to happen to have that kind of incentive. And it's a false hope incentive, because that $25,000 is just going to maybe increase 30 to 50, even 100% the number of buyers in the market for the same property. And what's that going to do? It's going to cause prices to rise. So if you want affordable housing, there's ways to do that too. But most bureaucrats don't have a clue of how to really solve the problem. But I think there are people potentially in a new administration that could get in gear and make this happen. That's all I wanted to add. Thanks.
I find it to be valuable. So thank you, John. Uella, you want to share anything before we play the next video? Mark, the scripture of the day, guys. For there is one God, one mediator between God and man, the man Christ Jesus. That's the scripture of the day. So Mark, get the next video ready. You want to share anything, Miss Uella?
No, that's fine, thank you. That's the first explanation I've had, and that makes sense about the gun thing. You know, I didn't realize exactly what it was that was the origin of that. So thank you very much, and John's explanation of the is it Kamala Harris's
proposal?
Yeah, yes. Thanks for why that wouldn't work.
But see, Uella, that's the problem with most Americans. They do not realize the government does not have a product. The government doesn't have $25,000 to give anyone. That comes from the actual taxpayers. So say that here in the United States, we have people that never want to own a home. They never want to own a home. That people have that right. They don't want a mortgage. They don't want to pay. They just want to pay rent. So then why should the rest of the homeowners be penalized to pay for people who don't ever want a home? Because that's where the money comes from. This is what most people never think through what people are saying. When people just trying to get elected, they're not thinking through the actual mechanism of how all these things work. So no government, especially here in the United States, our government is not owned by the government. Our government in the United States is owned by the people, because we elect them to represent us. But all the funding from the federal government comes from the private sector. It comes from the private sector.
Oh.
So that all money comes from the private sector.
Oh yeah,
the government
it comes from the people. Yes.
Comes from the people. So right now our government is so far out of control, $35 trillion in debt. We should never talk about more spending until we get our debt under control. Whether it's 25,000 or 6,000 or anything else, The government should not get involved in any projects of spending any additional money from this day forward. That's how I see it. So, are you ready, Mark?
Yep,
Mark, for
yep.
the next video? All right, go for it, buddy.
If you ask people to describe what is in the US Constitution, most would begin by citing freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and maybe the right to bear arms. But in fact, these are not part of the Constitution that came out of Philadelphia in September 1787. They are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. They are part of what is known as the Bill of Rights. And why was this Bill of Rights necessary? The answer is that many Americans thought the Constitution, a document dedicated to limiting federal power, didn't limit that power enough. This was not a fringe opinion. People like Thomas Jefferson, James Monroe, Patrick Henry, and George Mason all shared this fear. James Madison, one of the principal authors of the Constitution, disagreed. He argued that all the assurances the doubters wanted were already in the Constitution. They just needed to look a little more closely. But Madison, ever the pragmatist, came around, especially when it became clear that without those assurances, the Constitution would not be ratified. So Madison took it upon himself to draft the 10 amendments. The First Amendment is the most famous. It clearly sets out some of our most fundamental rights, the rights for which America has been universally admired. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble. The Second Amendment protects the right of the people to possess firearms. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Third Amendment is the most obscure, but made perfect sense to a citizenry that had, within recent memory, fought off the British Army. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner. The Fourth Amendment prohibits the government from arresting you or searching your belongings without some reason to think that a crime has occurred. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause. The Fifth Amendment guarantees you a fair legal process before you're deprived of your freedom or property, and protects you from being put on trial for the same crime twice. It also protects you from having to testify against yourself in court. This is the source of the phrase, plead the fifth. And if the government takes your property to put it to public use, for example, to build a highway, you must be paid a fair price for it. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. The Sixth Amendment gives those charged with a crime the right to have a speedy trial with a lawyer by their side and to confront their accusers. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. The Seventh Amendment gives you the right to trial by jury in civil cases. In suits at common law, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved. The Eighth Amendment protects you from unduly high bail and fines and antiquated forms of punishment. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. The Ninth Amendment makes it clear that if a right is not mentioned in the Constitution, it doesn't mean that right doesn't exist. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny others retained by the people. The 10th Amendment is, in effect, an insurance clause. it makes clear that any powers not reserved to the federal government belong to the states or the citizens. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. These are the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights. They have long been and remain an elegant testament to our understanding of freedom, the placing of strict limits on the power of government to interfere in our lives. It's hard to imagine America without them. I'm Sharif Girgis, Associate Professor of Law at the University of Notre Dame for Prager University. Thank you for watching this video. To keep PragerU videos free, please consider making a tax-deductible donation.
So that people will know on their own. Because unfortunately, and John knows this, the majority of even Americans do not know the Bill of Rights, or they don't know the first, 10 amendments. They don't know the Constitution, nor they know the Declaration of Independence. But I thought since, your vote, your voice, I think we all need to be aware of how our institutions work and why we should have limited government. So it makes a world of difference. So hope that makes sense to you guys. You want to share anything, John or Miss Yuella?
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see if we bring Cecilia up. Has she been? Anybody tried to bring her up? Let's have a go.
Yeah, we tried to bring her up, but she hasn't come up yet. So
Okay, no worries.
a couple of times.
No worries.
So okay. So Mark, you ready? Next one. Friend Mark. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mark? All right, here we go.
Yeah, something must. Oh, you get it? Okay.
He got it. Yeah, he got it. It's just taking time to load. For some reason, today it's not loading as quick. The upload speed is not good. So let's see what happens here.
We can't hear anymore.
Yeah, Yuella, it's keep buffering, Yuella. He's trying to
Okay.
get it to stop buffering. It's buffering, that's all.
Okay, no
Sometimes we have to just let it play through until it gets to the other, until it buffers.
worries. No worries.
There it goes. Thank you, Mark. So I just wanted to play a clip so you guys can see some people out here with they call it liberal logic, just different perspectives. It's very interesting on how people view things. But guys, think about it. That's what we have. They currently have the presidency. They currently have the Senate because Kamala Harris is the tiebreaker of the Senate. And they also have uh, less minor in the House. They used to have the House until we just took it back in 2022. But they had all these things, but yet they were still upset at the fact that we were doing our best to make sure that government was limited versus them passing every law. They can pass any law they want. It just makes a difference on those laws affecting all Americans. So I thought that was quite interesting. That's why I used that one in particular. All right, Mark, you want to put up the encouragement of the day and then play the next video. Hello, I think it's Vascos. I invited her up. Hello, hello. Maybe she didn't want to come up. Oh, there she goes. Hello. How are you, Vashon?
Hello.
Good to see you. So you guys can see this is the encouragement of the day. Politics ought to be a full-time profession. Every citizen who would, see what it says? Would protect the rights and privileges of free men. So we all should want to protect each other's rights. So you have a right to life, liberty, and you can pursue your own happiness. I should never infringe on that. I have no reason to infringe on your rights. So you have a right to do and be what you want based on our 3 documents. So I just can't go out there and be whatever I want. I still got to base it on the parameters of the country that we live in. Those are the laws of the land. So our 3 documents, what governs my behavior every single day. All right. All right, Mark. This is a very interesting one coming up, guys. Martin, it keeps buffering for some reason. I don't know why it's buffering today so much. Yeah, just back it up and try it again.
Try to turn your Wi-Fi off on your phone to see if that helps and use your cellular data.
Well, he's actually on the computer. He's actually on the computer. He's not on the phone.
Yeah, I know, but it's still. Yeah. Okay.
So he should be very solid because he's on the computer. But let's see, Mark. Mark, try again. This is the first day we've had this kind of situation. Probably because we're talking about this. That's probably what happens.
Don't know if it has a relationship because this is, even though it's on the computer, it's still a phone app. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I just,
But I don't know if he could turn off the Wi-Fi on his computer. Let's see if it.
I was just saying.
Okay, let's see. Okay, there you go. Let's see if it plays. Hey, Mark, put it. Okay, Mark. Okay, go to the next one, Mark. Just go to the next video. Just take that one down and just go to the next one. See if the next one plays better or different. That's all. Very interesting. They all play well this morning. So, is it Vashon? How you pronounce it?
Yes.
Okay. What part of the U.S. are you in?
I'm in North Carolina.
Okay, North Carolina. Did you get hit by any of the hurricane?
Well, I'm in Charlotte, so we were affected, but not like, Western North Carolina. We weren't, we were
Directly.
hit by the effects of the tropical storm, but we didn't have, but not too far from me. There's a place called Kings Mountain. It's about 35 minutes, and they were affected pretty bad. And then, of course, Asheville and places like that. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because no, my wife's sister lives in Charlotte also. So her and her husband lives there. All right, Mark. Let's see if this one works. Hopefully get a little better. This is, there we go.
You know what, Edward? That's what I was trying to say.
Hold on,
Edward,
Mark. Mark, pause it, Mark. Pause it, Mark. Pause it, Mark.
Edward, you sharing your screen might be impacting. That's what I was trying to say.
Okay, let me try to see if I don't share my screen. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, and then he can
All
try to close the bot completely down and bring it back in after you stop sharing.
Yeah. So Mark, you hear what she says? So try now. Just try to play it now since I closed my screen. See what happens. Say it again, Mark. All right, no problem. Thanks.
Yours a screen share, Edward, or was yours a video?
No, ours is a video. We're not using screen share's not working yet. So we have to use the ChatterPod in order for us to play it.
Yeah.